had a good Monday. It was not the best for DFS for me. It was like just couldn't quite get the right pieces. Definitely had some things that I liked, and just couldn't get the right matches. One of those nights. We've had a lot of them in NBA this year, but overall, I feel things are trending more in the right direction. I feel much better handle on things, even with the madness of everything. And if there's anything we can do better about updating what we're doing in Discord or whatever, just let us know. We want to do the best thing for all of our customers as possible. And with that said, we're going to get into today, going game by game. I will also be live at 6 to cover final thoughts, as well as I'll post all my late content stuff and my early content stuff as well in the premium Discord. And let's get after today. So we're going to go game by game starting right now. Feel free to pop in your thoughts and questions along the way. I'm happy to address them after I get through the games. And we'll go from there. Anyway. These are the spots you're going to want to attack early on. These early games definitely have the most value and the best situations. I'm trying to look at it right now with, again, going through a lot of things. I think I'm going to end up with a minimum, again, very conservatively, two Houston players on pretty much all my lineups, starting with Amon Thompson. The projection might be a little bit ambitious that they have here on SaberSim, but I do think that Amon's going to be 100. It'll be, assuming that he does start, he'll be 95% owned, just so you know. There's volatility with these guys sometimes. I don't really see the point of trying to talk about fading him in the morning part of this, but something maybe you could consider doing later in the day. But he'll be the highest owned player on the slate by a wide margin if he starts. And you're playing with fire by fading him. And if you do fade him, you really don't need to do anything else to get different tonight. I don't think it's 2 max. I think that there's a chance you end up playing like 4 of these guys. Once we go through the slate, you'll see why. Cam Whitmore, I think Cam Whitmore is a really strong play. I feel like I've been talking about Cam Whitmore since before he was even getting any minutes. But love Whitmore. I have him in a group with Brooks and Jabari Smith that I probably play one of those guys. And as of right now, Whitmore is probably my favorite, but it's pretty close between he and Jabari. I think we're assuming a lot of things about Jabari. Also, Houston's been playing in a lot of blowouts lately, so don't be a game log watcher and just assume that Whitmore and Thompson are going to go crazy, because they have been getting a lot of blowout run both ways. Houston's been blown out and they've blown out some teams. So you've seen some weird sort of stat lines from them. So just don't get overly carried away about that. And then I've got Şengün and Green separated into a category where I'm probably playing one of those guys. So I'm actually, most of my lineups will probably end up with 3 from this game, but I'm looking at it as a two minimum situation to start. You're probably, and again, starting probably with the way that the value is organized is a reasonable way to go, but mixing in some Brooks and Smith at some slightly lower ownership is definitely reasonable. So also remember, keep an eye out for the starting lineup. You never know if it might be Aaron Holiday back in Indy, who they end up starting alongside Jalen Green. It does not need to be Amon Thompson. Now that would make Amon a better tournament play, so it'll be slightly lower owned, but just throwing it out there. It's no guarantee that we see Amon Thompson start, although that is the way that it's leading right now. On the Indy side, I'd love to find a run back. Really hard to do. I'm expecting Halliburton to play. Obviously, if he doesn't, we have all kinds of run backs, and this game becomes the stackable spot, the first game of the day. So I wouldn't mind doing that. The other thing is that, like, Jalen Smith, we genuinely don't know about him. That would potentially open up things more. Miles Turner's minutes have been all over the place in close games. He's played like 12 minutes, 18 minutes in the game, and then you see him play like 30. I really have a hard time tracking this Indiana team because they don't track. They play the hot hand style outside of Halliburton pretty much, and sometimes it's Neesmith, sometimes it's Matherin. Matherin would be the preferred one for me. Buddy Hield's price is low, but you run the risk of him barely playing at all like he did in the last game. So really going to need to wait to know Jalen Smith and Halliburton officially. But as of right now, I still think even like if Turner wasn't getting any ownership, I would definitely want to take some shots there. But looking at him, if he really ends up double-digit owned after the minutes have been all over the place, might need to find something else. So I'm not in love with anything here. It's just hard to guess. But if I had to take a chance right now, I would lean Turner, Buddy Hield, Matherin as my guys to get to potentially run back, but not loving it. How to talk about Memphis today? We don't have any idea who's playing for Memphis. They're all over the map. This game's in Madison Square Garden. It's a huge spread. I don't think Memphis keeps this game close. I think the Knicks do beat the hell out of them. That's just my take. Probably going to leave me on the outside looking in for Memphis. I know that Vince Williams projects really well. Are they going to let him play 30 some odd minutes in a blowout? Even if it is it's not a good matchup. there's really nothing, Trey Jameson is we're basing it on a 1-game sample size that we think he's going to get the run. We don't know who's going to start really. They may get Derrick Rose back tonight. It's just they might have more active bodies tonight than they've had in a while. And even though they're all reasonably priced, it's really, really hard to know what to do until we know what the injury report actually looks like. So for right now, we're going to put Memphis on we'll talk about that more at 6 Eastern because I don't know what to do with it right now. On the Knicks side, I think this projection is kind of laughable on Precious. I have the 38. I don't know why Sabersim has him so high, but I do like Precious, and it's not impossible that he gets there. But for that to be a medium outcome is ridiculous, to be honest with you. They also are much higher on Miles McBride. The way I'm looking at this is I am probably going to get to 1 or 2 from the Knicks. I have a minimum set at 1 right now. I like McBride a lot. But it's hard for me to say which one is the sure thing. Like DiVincenzo, again, this game could blow out. DiVincenzo's been getting an insane amount of usage. I think that's probably the way I'm leaning is either McBride, Achua, or DiVincenzo right now. I do like Brunson, but for him to pay off the 9,700 price tag, you're going to have to get the minutes out of him. And I'm just not sure that's going to happen today. Now, usually the Knicks guys, they play their minutes, but this is a game that could really get out of hand. So I don't know that I want to just eat all the chalk in a game that I'm really worried about anyway. I also like Josh Hart and Hartenstein a little bit. So I have a minimum 1 set right now, but I don't know who it's going to end up being. If I had to gun to my head right now, playing the angle that I'm thinking maybe McBride as an extra piece of value so we can spend up for some guys in the next game. All right, back-to-back for Dallas and Brooklyn, both on a back-to-back. Dallas traveling. Kyrie back in Brooklyn. I can't pretend that I'm not noticing that. I don't know what it means. I wouldn't be shocked if we hear today, all of a sudden Kyrie is not going to play. I really don't know what to do with the situation right now. The one thing I do know is that Luka's a tremendous play either way. I think Luka is where you start your spend ups. There's plenty of value out there that you can use. So I love the idea of getting to Luka, and I will have some Kyrie where I don't have Luka. Nobody else from Dallas is even registering for me at all. On the Brooklyn side, again, going to depend on what happens with Simmons, Walker, and Cam Johnson. I'm sure a lot of you guys were affected by the Walker stuff last night. Getting injured was no fun. Even if he was struggling, like he still was going to get another 10 or 15 fantasy points. It's kind of irritating. But what can you do? Guys get injured. It's the NBA. We want some Cam Johnson clarity. We want some Lonnie Walker. We want some Ben Simmons clarity. Hard to know what's going to happen right now. If all those guys play, I honestly think that maybe Bridges is my favorite, but I don't think you have to play anybody. I kind of am open to Dinwiddie, although he's let me down a few times. But I would just like to know whether these guys are playing before I make any decisions. And at least we'll see what the early injury report brings. As of right now, I don't see any must plays on Brooklyn, but a bunch of guys who you certainly could consider. Moving over to Orlando, Miami. We see this every day. Jonathan Isaac always projects to be owned at 3,600 and never ends up with any ownership. I don't mind the idea of using Isaac. It's really just the fact that he's played 20 minutes in 4 of his last 7 games. We haven't seen 20 minutes out of him in like 4 years. So I'm just looking at things trending a little bit more in the right direction. He's a good per minute guy, maybe not as good this year, but I still believe 3,600, certainly something we can consider, multi-positional eligibility. I'm open to the Jonathan Isaac thing. Nothing else that stands out in a bad matchup for Orlando. This is not one of my favorite games. Just throwing out the Isaac thing, not like I love it, just I think it's a guy to consider. The only guy I have right here is Bam, but I do want to point out that this is exactly the kind of slate and matchup where I expect this game to be tough. And maybe Jimmy Butler at 7,500 is a way we can get different on this slate. So I have Butler as sort of like a tournament play. I have Butler or Bam, but Bam is going to have a little ownership. Butler will not. And I think that there is an outside chance of, getting, I don't want to say a stealing game, but getting that 45 to 50 like we've seen at certain games where they're threatened. They need to start winning games. We've seen a little more activity from Butler lately. Not every game, but some of them. And that's just something I considered a little bit off the board to do. Obviously, a tough matchup. I like Butler in tough matchups. I like him in those spots where they really need him. Moving on to Minnesota and Chicago. As of right now, I don't have anybody who's a priority in Minnesota. I will just point out that both Towns and Edwards are going to be very low owned and definitely makes sense. I think that I would lean Edwards over Towns. But remember, Chicago does give up 3-point shots. There's a chance that Towns has one of those really big games today. So I have Towns and Edwards in a category. It's harder to beat up the Bulls inside, but like Gobert, you're just counting on the rebounds. I don't know where I'm going to stand with him. I probably outside looking in. Definitely don't mind Nas Reed, but at ownership without really like a logical reason, I'm probably not going to prioritize it. I think Edwards and Towns are, as two sort of contrarian spend ups, sort of in the Jimmy Butler mold, are two guys who I'm considering today to use to get a little different with my builds. Chicago side of it, tough matchup at home. We have White probable. I'm a little surprised at the early ownership projection on DeRozan, but we know the drill with these guys, especially when they're at home. One of White, DeRozan, or Vooch usually gets there. It's a tough matchup for all of them. I think if I had to pick one, it would be DeRozan right now, but I certainly have no argument if you wanted to say. I think the perception of Gobert and the defense keeps like Vooch completely unowned here. And I think that's kind of interesting because realistically, as good of a defender as Gobert, it's more help side defense. It's not like this guy just shuts everybody down, doesn't have to face that many post-up players. I kind of like the idea of getting to one of Vooch or DeRozan, maybe Kobe White. But those are the main guys I have interest in on this side. I don't think anybody's a must play. I don't think anybody's a priority, but I do think DeRozan and Vooch are certainly interesting to consider. Moving on to the final, this is going to be a tough one again without knowing the status of Jalen Williams, and it starts at it's 9 Eastern, so it's a later game. Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace, Micic, and the other Jalen Williams are all questionable. Obviously, if they all sit, we have plenty of options. If none of them sit, I don't know that I'm all that excited about anything outside of maybe Shea. And I think that's what most people will do is the Shea thing. I kind of like Chet after having a rough couple games just in real life, not necessarily statistically. So right now, that's what I've got, but it really depends on Jalen Williams. I still think SGA is in play whether Williams plays or not. I have SGA or Holmgren from this spot, but definitely open to reconsidering that depending on who is in and who is out because we have a lot of Q tags. As I'm expecting we will have all the way up till the All-Star break. Utah at home, very tough to know who it's going to be on a given night. You're playing a little bit of roulette. My first thinking is one of Sexton or Clarkson. If we want to go back and you want a dumpster dive for either Keontae George or Chris Dunn, just a reminder that it is very fluid with their minutes. You don't really know who it's going to be on a given night. Same thing with Fontecchio with his minutes. Olynyk, Kessler, they sort of eat into each other. Everybody's healthy. Kind of a tricky situation. So I'm just going to keep it simple and say Sexton or Clarkson as my first look. I don't mind the idea if you want to get to a little bit of Markkanen, maybe to run back on Shea on the other side. I don't mind it. It's just not my favorite way of building on this slate. So as of right now, the only person I have the core tag on, I'm going to update these to post on the site and everything like that in a little bit. The only person I have the core tag on right now is Amen Thompson. Even if he doesn't start, I probably would still keep it there. But I'm definitely open to keeping all these other guys. I think this projection on Sexton is kind of wild. And I expect after the morning shoot-arounds, we'll have a better feel for who's actually going to play. So maybe today you will get my early builds and stuff a little bit later than usual, just because I want to go through all that. Anybody want to fire in any questions? I'm happy to go through them. B-back saying 2-max for him for Houston. I don't know if I agree with that. Holiday, I don't know if that's sneaky. There's nothing about playing Holiday we should ever be excited about. That you're literally the least active person, the lowest usage, and even if he starts, and then he's not, then he'll be super chalky and have all that volatility. So I would only be using Holiday probably if he gets less than 10 or 15% ownership, unless I really had a weird, up and down build that I was doing. So that's where I'm at, guys. I'm going to run with some builds. I'm going to mess around. I'm going to try and get my content done in the next few hours when we have a little bit more information, and mess around with some builds in the meantime, sort of see what kind of stuff I come up with that makes the most sense to me. And we'll go from there. I appreciate all you guys. Please click the like button. We really appreciate it. It allows us to keep doing these videos for free instead of charging them just for the premium only. But I will update the premium only very, very shortly with my early look, and then later on today with my final thoughts. So good luck to everybody today. Sheets should be back either this evening or tomorrow morning. Reminder, I am off tomorrow to go to the tournament, the Waste Management in Arizona. I will be in and out for DFS purposes in between. But ready to have some fun and make some money, and just want to wish everyone good luck and say